So with that, I would like to introduce Mr. Evan Reynolds, who's the who will shift gear a bit and talk about specifically motivating staff and how is that important aspect of the field services part is very crucial. And Mr. Evan Reynolds will talk to us today about how to best motivate staff. So I'll leave Mr. Evan to introduce himself.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, everybody, or good morning. It's almost afternoon. I'll try and keep it short. We are running a bit late, as you know. I'm going to talk to you today about motivating your field services staff, because in terms of the technological applications and in terms of the physical applications, it's all driven by people, and we need to be aware of that. Transforming your transforming the human factor is what is important, because when you have a look at all your activities have a human-based element in their processes, and both activities and the human factor are effectively a cost element that are used to be able to commit a service. Activities are process-driven, human beings are emotionally driven, and the human's ability to effectively process their activities depends often on their state of mind. Harnessing the state of mind, and you can harness the individual for better performance. And maximizing the individual's performance, you can then assist in bringing down your costs and increasing your profitability. So we need to understand how we can do this, and to do this one has to address the balance the corporate needs against that of the individual's needs. This, as you know, is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and there's a couple of items which are important in terms of this. Biological and physiological needs, basic requirements that the individual has or needs. Safety, and we'll be looking at those issues in terms of your work environment. Belongingness in terms of the work environment, the team that they operate in, their esteem, and then self-actualization, and that's the processes that drive people. Corporates work a little bit differently, because they look at maximization of profits. That's their primary focus, and in order to maximize profits, they use performance efficiency. And performance efficiency is something that is driven by individuals, and consequently individual welfare often falls down at the bottom of the triangle of the corporate hierarchy of needs. And it's important to try and balance that. So we are going to try and have a look at how you balance corporate needs with the individual's needs. And what happens in a situation, sorry, is the speaker going out? Often what happens in a situation like that is the corporation will realize that we need to do something to improve our operations costs. Things are a problem for our operations, and we now need to motivate the team. So a decision is made to talk to the staff, but the corporate's vision of talking to the staff is often at corporate level, and it's not at individual level. So communication goes down to the staff, and it can be very confusing. The message can be unclear, and it can be misinterpreted. So we, from a management perspective, look at it and think, we've done a good job in motivating our team, we've done a good job in harnessing them together and directing them, and this is the impression that the team have of the message that has been brought through. There's a complete disconnect in what you think you've told them and what they actually believe is happening. So to try and address this, you need to actually have a look at the aspect from, firstly, a management's perspective. Sorry, my apologies. Management. This is a single human entity that I'm showing over here. Management is your personal actions, how you do things, what standards you set, the quality of work you produce, the quality of work you expect from your team, the results that you achieve, and the results that your team achieves. Your leadership is your personal comportment, how you behave, how people perceive that you behave, how you interact with people, how you motivate people? What kind of an example do you set? And out of these comes your motivation. What is your personal motivation? It's your attitude and how people perceive you. How does your team perceive you as their manager and as their leader? Do you have a positive attitude? Do you have an aggressive attitude? Do you relate positively to people? Do you respect them? And you need to first have a look at addressing yourself in order to be able to address your team. So when you have a look at the rules of leadership and management, basically what you're looking at is your personal comportment. How should you behave? Interaction, in terms of how you should interact with others. This is basically your leadership level, this is your motivational level, and your work ethic, which is your personal management level. And that work ethic is setting of standards, measurements, and performance, and managing your workforce, but also yourself. You need to set the example. So when you look at personal comportment, my first rule is always treat people the way you would like to be treated. If you want to get a good result, you've got to give a good result. Be lavish with your praise and hearty with your approbation. It is easier to manage and to motivate people with praise than with punishment. And if a person does 4 things wrong and 1 thing right, go to him and say, that is an excellent thing, you did well there. Work on that and you'll find that you can turn people around who are not performing as they should. You need to lead by word and deed. You need to be the leader in front of your team, showing them how to do things, take them to where you want them. Not the guy standing at the back shouting instructions, because a lot of managers think that's how you do it, and it's not how you do it. Your team need to look up to you. They doesn't look back to you. So you need to lead by word and deed in your actions and your work output and the results that you achieve. You need to know the rules. You need to work with the rules and stick to the rules. If you break the rules, you can't expect your team to adhere to the rules. So you can't motivate your team to come to work on time if you don't come to work on time. Just little things like that. Very important that the impression you set for your staff is a positive impression. And you need to trust your team. That's the hardest thing in any environment, is to trust people, because you know within yourself the flaws and how people are going to react, and you always assume the worst. But you need to try and trust your people. In terms of your work ethic, if it is worth doing, it is worth measuring. And for your team's perspective, you must make sure that you have got good SOPs, standard operating procedures, because these things will link in with your service level agreements. And check your standard operating procedures from time to time. Then you need to set good KPIs or KPAs for your staff so that you can manage them and they know what targets they need to achieve in order to achieve the SOPs. And in setting these, you must ensure your SOPs and your KPIs are aligned with the job profiles. I've seen a number of instances where the job profile, the KPI, and the SOP are not the same. And those are really confused puppies who are trying to achieve what the business is expecting when nothing is aligned. So it's an important thing to get that alignment. You can't do your job well if you don't know what your job really is. Performance management, sorry, this thing is quite a heavy trigger. The performance management and performance appraisals are something that is very important from my perspective. You need to do at least a quarterly appraisal, a sit-down quarterly appraisal with your team members. If you don't sit with them and tell them, this is what you're doing, this is what you've achieved, these were your KPIs, that's what you've achieved, this is what you haven't achieved, and this is how we're going to go ahead. Keep that going, that's a good thing. Work better on this because this is not good enough, and if you don't improve on there, I'm going to take disciplinary action. They must come out of this with a very clear idea of what's happening. You manage these people for a year at a time. They commit, they provide service for the company. If you can't provide 4 days in the year to sit down with them, you need to reevaluate your own timing. And you should sit with them every month in an informal process just to see where they are with their KPIs, because that helps them develop the confidence to do what they want. A performance appraisal, most of you, I presume, who believes that your performance appraisal is a negative process? How many of you have been in a performance appraisal where you go in there with apprehension, you get beaten with a very big stick and you walk out battered and bruised? That's a thing we've all experienced. If you can turn that around, that the staff know that I'm going for appraisal now to see how well I've done, is excited about it, then you're actually making a big achievement in terms of getting your staff motivated. Pay attention to detail. All the little things count. If you walk into an office and there's an untidiness and unsafe factor, deal with it. If someone hurts themselves, it's your fault if you saw it and you didn't address it. Because those little details in terms of, particularly with people who do traveling work, your field services staff, if you go and inspect his vehicle and you see its windscreen is completely dirty, make him wash it. If the vehicle is dirty, get it washed. Why? Because that's your company's logo on there. That's your representation. If the wheels are worn, the tires are worn out, get them changed, because that could cause an accident. You need to pay attention to the detail that sometimes your teams don't see. Because as the leader of your team, they expect you to pick up what they miss. I have a little process that I like to work on. If it's not in writing, it never happened. How many times are you faced with an argument between, I told you to do this, but I didn't understand it. No, you didn't tell me. I didn't remember. Or you give a person a detailed instruction. You've got to do this. You must do it by that stage. You must go there first. It's got to be to this standard. Make sure you take this with. And you give them a whole list of instructions. And they're walking out, and by the time they're out the door, everything is left back in your office. So if you give an instruction, if you have a performance appraisal, anything, follow it up in writing in bullet points, so that it is clear and available for your team member to be able to take with him. If he doesn't have it in writing and he misses a step, then it's something that might be, you could have done better in achieving that. And then okay is not good enough. Often people will come back, did you get the job done? How did it go? It's okay. Was it to standard? Not quite to standard, but it's okay. You have a corporation have set a benchmark. Your field services team has come and done an okay job. You accept it. What have you done? You've dropped your corporate benchmark to okay. From excellent to okay. Okay is never good enough. If someone comes back and has done an okay job, maybe you must send him back to go and do an excellent. Finish what you've done. Because okay, it becomes too easy to accept okay, particularly if there's a communication issue with someone. We work in a very diverse cultural environment, and sometimes the communication is different. So you'll accept something that you wouldn't normally accept. Don't. Maintain your standards. Interaction with people. Everyone is a member of the team, but there can only be one leader. You must remember you are part of the team. But you have to lead the team. So you need to know when to step into a team member role and when to step into a team leadership role. Explain as if to a little child. Don't be condescending. But what I'm trying to emphasize here, you must be very clear. If I'm explaining to 4 people in my team, one of them comes from India, one from Pakistan, one from the Philippines, and one of them is from the UAE. They all understand me different. I can understand my accent, but they can't understand my accent. So you need to make sure that when you explain things, you make it simple, to the point, and follow up that in writing where you need to, so that you can give them something as a takeaway. Follow up, follow up, follow up. That I can't emphasize enough. And you think to yourself, well, follow up, how's that motivating? That is supporting your team. Your team goes out into the field and they work under some tough conditions. I sit in my air-conditioned office in Dubai, and my team goes through to a place in Ruwais. It's 350 kilometers. He's got to drive there. Then he's got to go and work on a generator, which needs service and maintenance. And the temperature outside is 38 degrees. The temperature inside the generator room is probably pushing closer to 48, 50. And you don't understand the conditions he's working in. So if you are following up with your staff, how's it going, what's the position, and so on, you can check that they are adhering to the safety requirements. You can give them support when it's too hot, when it's too cold, when they're having difficulty. So it's important to always follow up with your team in a supporting fashion, not in a fashion of checking on them to see if they're doing wrong. And listen. Listen to your people. They will talk to you, and they will explain to you some things. And sometimes that listening means hearing what they say and asking questions to get clarification, because sometimes they have difficulty expressing themselves clearly. And if you've gone to your boss and you've tried to tell him something and he hasn't listened to you, you walk away feeling very defeated and demotivated. I'm not going to talk to that guy who doesn't listen to me. What's the point? But if you've got out of him what you want and you can promise him the support that he needs, he's going to walk away feeling, oh, that is good. I can get this job done. And that's what you're wanting. You want to convert the person's emotions into a positive emotion. And finally, if the people won't change, if you've done everything to motivate your people, get rid of them and replace them. This little analogy I really like because it actually explains a lot of what we're talking about. Foreman number 1, foreman number 2. He's working from this direction, they're working from that direction. So there's no alignment in the business. There was no communication between them, and that's why they have a problem. They didn't listen to each other. My question is, where's their boss? Where was he in the instruction process, and why wasn't he following up? Because if he'd been following up, he would have been able to address this issue. This tells you a lot, this picture. And of course, what do these guys think of this whole process? Oh, these management are a bunch of monkeys. How can you motivate people when they don't think that you guys can think very well? So this is a nice little analogy to take into consideration when you're looking at your whole team process. It all starts with you and it works down. I've got 20 basic principles of motivation. I'm going to just go through them very, very quickly because of the limited amount of time. They're my personal principles. You can adapt and apply them as you feel necessary. What should you do with your team? You should listen to them, you should treat them fairly, and you should support them, and you should provide them with the necessary training and the tools. And this is something that your previous speakers have emphasized, the correct tools. If there's advanced technology that they can use, bring it in and introduce it. If there are phones with apps that can be utilized to enhance their ability to do their job better, introduce it. Train them and introduce it. Make yourself available to your team at all times, should they wish to speak to you, and take into consideration their issues, even if they don't seem important to you, because they are important to that individual. Provide a consistent structure within to operate. They must know that the process is always the same. Set clear parameters, clear KPIs, make sure your SOPs are clear, make sure they're aligned with your SLAs, and then hold your staff to achieving those KPIs. Accountability. If you've given him the KPI, he's accountable for it, he must achieve it. You should trust them to do the job properly. You have no option. They are there, you here. You have to trust them. And that's why you have to support them and follow up. You should give clear and precise instructions. Believe them when they say they have a problem, because it might not seem that big, but it might be big to them. You should remunerate them fairly. You should punish them firmly, fairly, and consistently. If he knows this is the line and he steps over it, he's going to get his knuckles knocked, then you must knock his knuckles every time he goes over that line, because if you don't, he's going to push it. Most of you in the room, I presume, have had little children. What do those toddlers do? They test that line every single day. And if you don't take firm action, they will take control. And when your toddlers run the household, it can be a screaming nightmare. So the same process with your staff. Set the parameters, keep the parameters, hold them to those parameters. And don't be shy to take action. Because if you've worked for a boss who's very strict, when you look back in the years at that boss, he's the guy who taught you the most. The guy who was lax didn't teach you that much because you weren't ever really sure of what was going on. Address the HR and pay issues swiftly. I get very unhappy when my pay is not right. And I get very unhappy when my flight bookings are not right when I'm trying to get back to my home country. Little things like that, very, very important to people, particularly living in a country like we're living in here as an expatriate. Those things are of great significance. Give due praise where praise is deserved. That's your strongest motivating tool. Praise your staff when they've done well. Don't praise them when they haven't done well. Don't praise them if it's okay. Okay is not good enough. Only praise them if they've achieved the mark. You should make them feel important. You should make them feel that their contribution is important. You should make them feel that they are part of the team, because that's very important. You should show genuine and open concern, and you should treat them like you would like to be treated. Ultimately, all of those things are incorporated in that last point. So if you can just treat your team the way you'd like to be treated, you would be effectively putting into place all of those issues. Difficulties in motivating your field services staff. You guys know that. Basically, remote working locations, it's very difficult to monitor and supervise their activities. Communication is a problem. If they're in an area where there's no cell phone contact or bad signals, it's hard to communicate, and it's hard for them to communicate to you. So to try and communicate and to motivate your people under those conditions, it's difficult. Safety concerns is a big issue. How do you motivate your people to apply all the safety procedures when it's very hot, in a very hot environment where you should be keeping the safety helmet on and you want to take it off? You should be wearing gloves, but his hands feel like they're on fire, he takes them off. He doesn't wear safety shoes because you're not there to see. And those motivational issues are important. Also, if they drive, we've spoken about vehicles before. Is that vehicle safe? Is it roadworthy? Is it serviced? Is it checked? Is it inspected every single day so that it is safe for the team? And that's part of his function. And if he does a good job, you must say, well done. You do a good job. You look after your vehicle well. I've got a cleaner who cleans my office. He was a new cleaner. He came in there, I came in and it was very, very good. And I said to him, gee, you do the most remarkable job of cleaning my office. That place sparkles like I've never seen it sparkle, simply because I said he's done a very good job. And you carry that through to your team. Other difficulties in motivating your field services team is the trust factor. You need to trust them to deliver the service that they are supposed to be delivering. Otherwise you get, as my previous colleague mentioned, ugly smiley faces, non-smiley faces from your customer. Periods of time away from the office. If he's going, and another example, I work in Ruwais. A lot of our maintenance in my facility is done by people coming from Dubai or Abu Dhabi. From Dubai, it's 350 kilometers. So that is a minimum of a 3-hour trip there. Then he's going to work, and he's going to do 3 hours drive back. So technically you could lose him for the whole day. And you don't know if he's going maybe to Abu Dhabi, from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, or vice versa, and he takes 4 hours to do a job. If you aren't managing that, you don't know whether he's in actual fact adhering to the time. And that's where the trust comes in. You need to learn to motivate your team so that you can trust them to spend the time that they should and not longer than they should. And then you have to take into consideration cultural differences in terms of staffing. We all come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, and they have an impact on your staff and how you communicate with them and how they interpret your communication. And these factors make it very difficult to motivate your team. So how do we motivate field services staff? We work through this hierarchy of needs. Sorry, I do apologize for my bad fingers here. Biological and physiological needs. This is where you take care of the appropriate tools, equipment, remuneration. That's where their work package comes in their housing, if they're living in a labor camp, or if they're getting a housing allowance, transport, all of that. That falls within that category. But also in terms of that, with appropriate equipment, if there's new equipment, new technology, advanced equipment, better tools, get it for them. Sometimes you have to write off perfectly good equipment to get something better. But if it's going to enhance the job and enhance the motivation of your team, maybe it's worth the expense. There's safety needs. Safety and security in your working environment. Clearly defined company policies, procedures, parameters, clearly defined standard operating procedures. This is his framework, his safety framework that he needs to operate in. And KPIs, clearly defined expectations. He must know exactly what you expect of them and what the consequences are if he doesn't achieve. Most companies link KPIs to the bonus and maybe to an increase. And I find it very helpful to call a guy in and sit there and say, well, listen, at this point in time, it's now, we in the 6 months down the track in this year, this is your second performance appraisal. And at this rate, if you don't sort this out, you will not be getting your bonus, or you're not going to be getting an increase. They need to know that way early in the year. If you don't tell them that, it comes as a shock. Oh, I didn't know that. advise them of the consequences of them not achieving that. So these are very important. Then you address their belonging and love needs. Everybody needs some love. And you deal with that with your team mentality and your team ethos. You make them feel. Your field services group that goes away is a team. And they need to have a team leader and a team structure and a team operating and a reporting process. But when they come back, they're part of the greater multiple teams. So they're a team within a team. And they need to understand that the teams all work to the same goal. And if one team is failing, it's pulling all the other teams down. And that you can use in terms of just motivational talks with your staff. If you're looking at the esteem needs, you'll be dealing with those in terms of praise, recognition, positive feedback, performance evaluations. Use the performance evaluation as a positive motivation tool. It's very powerful and it works. And self-actualization, advancement, promotion, training. You guys are all attending a seminar. A lot of you attend a lot of seminars, so it's not that spectacular. But for someone who's working in the field, to be taken out and put into a training course, it makes them feel special. The company cares for me. I'm going to be able to learn something new. Cool, I'm going to be out of the heat for a while. But training and seminars for your team has a big aspect in motivating them and also dealing with this self-actualization, because that's part of them taking their mentality to a higher level. And that's part of what you're wanting to do. So in closing, motivation is the art of influencing hearts and minds in a positive and progressive way. That's what you're trying to do. Every human being is an individual. Respect their individuality. What you can add on there is teach them how to operate in a team, even though they have the individuality, because they cannot stand apart from the team. Trust your team and give them reason to trust you. Trust works both ways. And ultimately, as I say, treat your staff the way you would like to be treated. Thank you. Is there time for questions? Any questions?
Okay, so if you have questions, we can take them in the break also. Now we'll be stopping for a break, and I'll take Evan's last note. Treat yourself as you'd like to be treated. So we'll actually treat you for a break and coffee. And then we'll have you here back in 15 minutes.